Alright, hello, welcome all. So what I think I'll do today, because, well, I don't feel like playing Rocket League or DBD or anything like that, is let's go to the Dead by Daylight Creations forum and just provide feedback. Generally, I go through and I try to comment on some of the things that I see, but why not just vocalize everything? So the first thing that we have, let's see. Fan chapter, Frozen in Fear. I actually just got done doing this. This person wants to create an ice queen. If you pause the video, you can read what all of this is. Just a model picture of what she'd look like. Now, the first part, Hex, Wary Weather. As long as the... Oh, wait, I need to give credit. KingFrost is the one that created this. Now, as he says, he doesn't own this image. It's just an idea of what she should look like. Of course, because of the engine Dead by Daylight has, you'll have just the basic set of her gown, and then she'll have, I don't want to say frilly things, but things coming off of her, like Ghostface's robe and stuff like that. She'll have a couple of things coming off of her. And then this staff will probably just be one solitary thing with a crystal on it, just to limit frame issues. Hex, Wary Weather. As long as this totem stands, all survivors suffer from the exhaustion status effects. The survivor who cleanses this totem will become exhausted for 10, 20, 30 seconds. Now I'm going to give what I think live on this, and I'm going to go down and show you what I wrote beforehand. Now, one thing that I didn't mention is that the survivor who cleanses this totem will become exhausted for 10, 20, or 30 seconds. That is very redundant because survivors are always exhausted. They're going to stay exhausted from the moment that they stay in the run, or spawn into the run, to the moment that the totem goes down. Then whoever cleanses the totem is going to receive an extra 30 seconds of exhaustion. It's kind of redundant and doesn't need to have that. Also, the perk itself is way too powerful and needs to be nerfed. Because you are literally cutting out a majority of perks that can no longer be used from the start of the game. And like I said, if somebody runs No Mither, which coming in the future, I'll show you that post I made, is going to absolutely destroy their entire build unless they have, like Soul Guard or something like that for when they go down. Anybody running Dead Hard or any of the meta perks, really, that have an exhaustion effect. Even newer survivors that are just, playing the game, you're taking out the sprint burst and things like that they could use and trying to get, any type of value out of. So on this particular thing, it just needs to be nerfed. Which I think I'm just going to give a conclusion.
Sorry, I don't know the answer to this one, but I'm learning.
I said conclusion, but okay. Anyways, we'll come back to that. Cooldown. When things heat up, you know how to keep your cool. Your other perks will cool down 30% faster. This is absolutely terrifying when it comes to other killers. And when people make particular perks and all that, there's some things you got to consider. The perk may not be powerful on the killer that you design, but you have to think about other killers that are in the game. What are you gonna nerf them and buffs and stuff like that if it's a survivor versus a killer that you're trying to implement? Making all cooldowns, well, perk cooldowns, 30% faster is absolutely positively terrifying. I did the math and I put it down at the bottom. You'll see all of that later on. But yeah. And if you've been out, AC Stare, if you've been out of a chase for 40, 35, or 30 seconds in this case, you'll see an aura of all survivors more than 40 meters away for 4 seconds. This perk right here, because of how everything goes, and actually needs some sort of buff. If you're out of a chase for 30 seconds, you are essentially leaving dead space. I mean, you're going to assume you're going to be looking around for other survivors, and you'll usually find another survivor within 30 seconds. This is a good, in-game perk where you have 2 survivors left and you've knocked one down. This would allow you to find the last survivor that's hiding, if they're not in a locker, of course. Which, if they know you're going up against something like that, they're definitely going to be. It's a very good end-game perk, to where you can kind of get that 3-piece to a 4-piece to prevent survivors from going out. But in that case, it's kind of unfair. Which I never talked about the end game in my actual review of this, but now that I'm thinking more about it, it needs to have some sort of deactivation. Because like I said, once you get the 2 survivors, you're gonna constantly know where they are. And it's gonna make the end game kind of just ridiculous, especially if it's a 3-gen situation. The survivors will never actually be able to get back to the gens to do them, because you can just stand in between them, wait a significant amount of time, and then boom, you can pop one up and see where they're at for about 4 seconds. So I guess a cooldown or something, maybe even turning it into a hex totem as well, could be an additive for this. Power, I intentionally didn't look at. None of the info or any of this stuff. I had never looked at the power, because this is something when I wanted to go over. So the Ice Queen can throw icicles at survivors. These do not damage survivors, but instead increase their cold level. So it has almost the trickster's effect, except that it has accurate icicles. You're throwing accurate things instead of inaccurate things. But instead increase their cold level. So it has sort of like a, I don't know, the thing that comes to mind is the doctor's effect. Survivors inside Code Queen's terror radius also slowly increase their cold level. So yeah, an old school doctor thing. How the old doctor worked is when you were in your static shock, which was different from what it is now. You actually had to put your weapon away and hold out your hand to static shock. Anybody inside of your terror radius slowly gained madness. And in the past, I actually created a build that made the entire map be covered in terror radius, so I would just hold out my hand and keep everybody in madness 3. It was basically just lock the game down completely. They couldn't do anything. But anyway, survivors inside the terror radius gain their cold level. This, like I said, stacked with any perks that increase any type of terror radius or anything like that, you're gonna have a huge amount of cold level. Survivors can decrease their code level by going to one of the 4 fires around the map. Okay. Now you're incorporating in like the plague system. Except instead of interacting with it, which I mean you might have to, it's not specified here, you stand around it to keep you from being locked in. It takes 5 seconds per level, up to 15 seconds to reduce code level to 0. So there's 3 levels of coldness. Now there is a fundamental flaw in this particular build and creator. I'm not picking fun at you or anything. Hopefully this is some sort of constructive criticism, if you even see this. I might post a video, come back, post a link, or I might just let it go and just let it sit on the channel, because this is, practice just for me. So there's 4 fires around the map, which should be 5. Generally, it's 5 in Dead by Daylight, so you have places you can go throughout the entire area. So that'll have to be changed to 5 fires around the map, because 4 is not enough. If not more. It doesn't say how fast the code level increases per hit. At least now it doesn't show in the general description how long it takes for code level when you get hit, how far it goes up. But I mean, that'll be for the game devs to decide. Now, I'm going to go back to the doctor and the huntress and, well, not the huntress, the trickster and things like this. Trickster throws rapid, what are they, kunai? Knives? I'm just going to say knives. At survivors. As they get hit, gauge builds up. If survivors get away out of the chase, the gauge goes back down and dissipates, which makes it kind of balanced. The way this is lined up, if the queen sees somebody, she can throw an icicle at them and then continue to chase them. And the longer that the chase persists, the more the code level is going to go up. So in essence, if a survivor doesn't pre-drop pallets or get that really good stun and get away, there's no way for them to actually, break out of this code. It's just going to be code level building up, and building up all throughout the game. Another thing I wanted to think about is, do lockers affect code level? Like, if you're in a locker, do you get some sort of warmth? Or does it just completely negate everything from happening? I mean, what happens when you're in a locker? Things like that. Now, the effects of code levels. Tier 1, survivors will shiver, similar to sounds made who are sick from nemesis and cannot fast vault. Tier 1, you cannot fast vault. That's fast vaulting windows, fast vaulting pallets, etc., etc. Cannot fast vault. 1. Do perks like lithe and things like that, do they cancel this fast vault? What does spine chill, things like that interact with it? But making tier 1 survivors cannot fast vault, you're literally controlling the game, because now they're exhausted, so they have no way to dead hard or get out anything like that because of the first perk. Now you have this tier 1 that makes it to where they cannot fast vault. So if the Ice Queen is anywhere near you, you cannot use pallets effectively, because you basically have to early throw, and you can't, under any circumstances, use windows. because you're going to get a medium or slow vault depending on what you're doing, and they're just going to get grabbed from the window. So you're completely taking out the ability for perks. You're completely taking out the ability of fast vaults and things like that. Not a good tier 1. The effects of tier 2, you get all the effects of tier 1. Survivors suffer 10% repair penalty. Why wouldn't the repair penalty be the tier 1? Because if you're shivering constantly, you shouldn't be able to repair as efficiently as if you wasn't shivering. I mean, shivering should offer, greater skill checks, more skill checks and things like that. They should offer negative effects, a shorter skill check bar maybe, harder skill checks, aka there should be some sort of repair penalty. I don't know about 10%, because that's an extra 8 seconds added to that. Especially for it just being tier 1 repair. Because I don't even think Thatanophobia is that bad, is it? Thatanophobia might be like 25%, I don't know. Let's go EA. Death Parade. Dead by Daylight Killer Perk List. Oh, I showed something I wasn't supposed to, but oh well. There's no search bar, so let's control F. Can I just not spell? I thought it was Thatanophobia. Apparently I cannot spell. Let's try phobia. Oh, not Thatanophobia. Thanatophobia. Like Thanatos, the god of death. Thanatophobia. So Thanatophobia is a stackable 4.5 to 5% to a maximum of 20%. So something that would, like Thanatophobia, which has a stacking effect, every single injured or dying or hooked survivor adds a stacking bonus. You can get half of this effect, or 1.5 times, but let's go half of the effect, just by being around regular survivors. So I'd say maybe a 5% repair penalty, since it's something that everybody's probably gonna have. You're probably gonna be at tier 1 at all times. This game also has a habit of, once you get the tier 1, that's the lowest you can get, to try to implement the killer's power. So that'll be a permanent, probably. That's like permanent, like 5% repair. It takes 4 seconds off of a complete gen repair or something like that. But that's per gen, so I mean that's, not too terrible for a tier 1. But I mean, 10% might be good. I mean, if the character is unbalanced and needs, a buff in the future, keep the 10% in mind. But I would start low and then go high. Then when you get the tier 2, get to the survivors. I wouldn't say cannot fast vault. I would say vault speed should be decreased. So if they do fast vault, it's going to still be a fast vault, but it's going to be a slower one. Because fast vaults are, the bread and butter of survivors in these loops. If you medium vault, you're basically getting slapped. So you could decrease the amount of a fast vault, like decrease the speed of all vaults. I could see that, but completely canceling it out. So there's no fast vaulting. Huge repair penalty. Plus exhausted status effect. Then survivors are exposed and if injured or broken. Well, now you just have where the plague is coming out. Survivors are exposed and if injured or broken. There are a lot of hex totems and things like that. A lot of killers too that provide the exposed status effect. Instead of saying you're tier 3 and basically making it an enhanced Michael Myers plus plague, or just plague if you look at it like that, why not take the tier 3 and make it different? If you're tier 3 type of cold, we're talking, hypothermia, almost about to die type of thing. Like your body's basically almost frozen. It's starting to become stiff. You're starting to lose consciousness, things like that. I would like, instead of going through the killer trope and saying, well, I'm going to make my killer, the strongest available, if, you added in things like the concussion, like a knockout, the concussion effect starts to set in, blindness effect, the incapacitated, I think it is, or shackled, or whatever. The clown's effect applies when you get hit with it, where that slow you get. I think it's like two hands tied together. Adding in things like that. If they're injured, instead of breaking them, why not make them get, like a mend effect? Because if you're gonna go like this high in tier 3, you're exposed, you're injured, and things like that. I mean, granted, you can stand by a fire for 5 seconds and get that back, but are you going to stay injured after the 5 seconds, or after all of that's done, do you get your health back, the exposed fact go away, the broken status? Well, broken status stays broken. You don't come back from that. You can't get, well, no, if it's interactable, you can do it like the plague's water thing. So it would have to be interactable, because I don't think they can program it to have it where you stand next to something and it brings you back up a health state. Yes, they could. You can program it to do anything, but that would be a lot of extra programming. So, But as that, if you're in a chase with her, and you're actually, looping her and doing what you need to do, the cannot fast vault at tier 1 is going to completely end chases right then and there. Cannot fast vault needs to be taken out of that equation and added in with other effects. Repair speed needs to be made less and possibly switch to tier 1 and another tier 2 be made. Tier 3 doesn't sound that bad because it only takes 5 seconds in front of a fire, but I mean, if you're being chased and you've made it that far, or things of that nature, I mean, you're kind of forced to go to a fire at that point. So it's kind of a toss-up between the tier 3. It's completely fine. But if you want to have all of these OP perks and abilities and things happening, it's just a stacking of overpowered, overpowered, overpowered. Because as of this point, you're just taking what you don't like from other killers, fixing it, and then jamming it into this one particular killer instead of making them unique. Next line, Ice Queen throws icicles similar to the way the trickster throws blades, but she doesn't have to reload. So now she has an infinite amount of power and an infinite amount of blades. If it's similar to the way the trickster throws blades, then I'm assuming that they're going to be inaccurate too, which now you just made it kind of into a trope. There's literally just different survivors of the things that you don't like and throwing them all together. So now, instead of making it the way Trickster throws blades, why not make it the way similar to the Huntress throws hatchets or something like that, and then just giving it a cooldown, so you're not constantly just running around, just, you know, launching a hail of blades at somebody as they're trying to run away, and then never happen to reload. They can literally just follow you around, getting you to tier 3 very quickly. Actually, you don't even have to get them to tier 3. Once they hit tier 1, they can't fast vault anymore. After you get them to tier 1, they really can't escape you except through pallets. So after that, you just gotta walk over and bonk them. Go to the next person, get them in the tier 1, bonk them. Additionally, Ice Queen can use her icicles on generators to cause them to raise their survivor's code level as they work on them, similar to Plague's Vomit. Okay. This is just a reskin Plague. Like I said with a previous post that I did, if they ever decide to do alternate versions of killers, like Plague now becomes Ice Queen, this would fit in almost perfectly. It has similar things like that, but it's completely separate. Which I think afterwards I might make alternate versions of killers, which would be a very new and worthwhile addition to the game. People would be excited, you know. Instead of using the same killer that does that, you can pick an alternate version that's not just, you know, a cosmetic switch that has different powers and different things. You're still using the old content and the character you still love, but now they have different weapons. And every weapon that you see, instead of it being cosmetic, changes the way the killer behaves. It would be revolutionary for Dead by Daylight. But now we're getting to the fact that, like I said, this is just a mix. It's a whole bunch of different killers shoved together. All the good that comes from them shoved together into one character. Yes, you want your killer to be played over all else, but you don't want your killer to be the #1 played killer in all of DBD, because it's just that ridiculous. Like, picture yourself playing against your character and see how it's actually going to be. Like, would you be able to escape? Picture the perks and all of that stuff on another killer. Would you be able to play your game reasonably? Absolute zero. The Ice Queen secondary ability now? Oh my. Builds up as survivors use campfires to reduce their code level. When used, Absolute Zero will instantly raise the code level of all survivors within her terror radius by 2 levels. Absolute Zero also causes all campfires to be put out, requiring survivors to restart them an extra 10 seconds. Do what now? So if all survivors go to campfires and reduce their code level, they're gonna be put automatically into 2 levels. So that's gonna prevent them from fast vaulting and prevent them from repairing. Plus, she has trickster style infinite icicles that she can throw to easily get whoever she's chasing to tier 3. At this point, why not just down the person or have absolute zero down the person they're chasing and put the campfires out? Because that's effectively what it's doing. Then the campfires take 10 seconds to spawn, and I'm assuming the Ice Queen can see where the campfires are and doesn't need to memorize where they are. That's wild. That's wild. Oh, this is supposed to be a survivor. Okay, I see. So, we'll switch over to the survivor side of things. If the survivor is OP as the killer, this should be interesting. Perks: Silent Stare. Survivors within the boon totem range benefit from the following effects. Noise caused by survivors are reduced by 100% and will create no loud noise notifications from missed skill checks or rushed actions. This is a mix of, 2 or 3 perks? No noise notification for missed skill checks is whatever the one it is for the Jinn. When they miss a skill check, the Jinn regresses, but there's no notification. No notification from rushed actions, that's quick and quiet. It, and no noises from survivors. So that's Iron Will. So Iron Will, whatever that Jinn perk it is, and the quick and quiet. It's all 3 of those mixed together. If you run that with the healing one or the other one that leaves no scratch marks, you now have a completely undetected survivor while they're inside of that boon totem. So nothing you can do will be heard by killer. So if the killer's not on their butt 24/7, or they get stunned or some crap like that, now they have no information to go by. I would break this up into multiple perks if you want to do it that way, but I mean, you already have perks for the missed skill checks and rushed actions, so noise caused by survivors are reduced by, can't make it a 100% because it's noises, which I'm assuming that goes from grunts of pain, that goes from running, stepping in grass, things like that the spirit uses to identify survivors. Jinn, working on Jinns and things like that, getting in and out of lockers, etc., etc. All of those are considered noises, so if you do want to make a boon totem like that, I would leave the max at 50%, and then have the rest fall below. And even 50% reduced, I mean, yes, anybody using a good set of headphones will be able to easily counteract that, but I mean 75% is just ridiculous, especially for somebody playing on console or hooked to a TV and not using headphones, or new players. And 100%, you're asking way too much. No noise within the boon totem. Some are like 24 meters, some go even more than that. No noise notifications at all. I don't know about that one, Chief. Next, bunny slope. While running on an incline, uphill or downhill, press the active ability to start running at 150% speed for 3 seconds. Causes the exhaustion status effect for 40 seconds. Cannot be used while exhausted. Stairs count. Well, if you put this character up against your actual character, bunny slope will not be activated at the start of the game. So you'll have a overpowered boon totem, but this perk will not be activated. While running on an incline, uphill or downhill, press the active ability. Dead by Daylight has, the obvious glitches where you can get balanced landing charges and things like that off of things that aren't exactly balanced landing, but since you bounced off something in the correct way, you can prevent the initial stagger and continue to run with the balanced landing. Bunny slope would be absolutely busted. Any type of change in incline, you could run over a tire and get bunny slope. It's basically just sprint burst, but you have to bounce off of something. It would be way too easy to activate. There's a lot of places that you can climb up on rocks and other things to get that slopage, and then just jump off of it and continue to go. I think bunny slope is probably, its main thing is to be used for basement and in other places that have buildings that when you're getting chased upstairs, there's really nothing you can do to give you a little speed burst there. But that can be abused a lot. And I feel bad for any killer that gets Midwich or any map like that. And then Cool Under Pressure. While in the killer's terror radius, unhook survivors 100% faster and heal survivors 6% faster. There is a perk that the survivors have. I cannot think of what it is for the life of me, but it unhooks survivors faster and already heals survivors faster. Oh, what's it called? I run it all the time. Oh, I think the icon is just a bunch of hooks. What's it called? I'll tell you what, let's search for unhook. Would be probably the less common term. It's not borrowed time. Breakdown, no. Decisive, no. Deliverance. Is it Desperate Measures? Yeah. Desperate Measures. Increased healing and unhooking speeds by 14% for each injured, hooked, or surviving or dying survivor, up to a maximum of 56%. With this perk, you have increased healing and unhooking speeds up to 56% per person injured. So that's 14% base if you're just unhooking one person that's gotten hit. Here, you're unhooking 100% faster and healing 6% faster. When I can get a 14% heal, because the unhooking is fast in general. Just walking up and pulling somebody off the hook 100% faster would literally, you basically walk up and slap them off the hook at that point. There wouldn't even be no animation, you would just whoosh. Because I've had a full, 56% proc where everybody's injured and pulled a survivor off a hook, then immediately healed them. It's super fast. This is a huge over-exaggeration of what you're needing. And then you balance this huge unhook speed with a very slow healing speed. I think this part needs to be reworked, or just something else. Then you also have to be within the killer's terror radius for this. So I see why this is bigger, but honestly, it doesn't need to be. Because if you're in the killer's terror radius, the only way you're getting away with this, or unhooking faster, is with borrowed time. If you're using borrowed time and in killer's terror radius, the healing does not matter at this point. So this perk kind of goes against itself. If you're in the terror radius of the killer, this will help top off if you unhook somebody and you start healing them and the killer gets closer. That 6%, faster heal speed might help you just about finish the heal before the killer gets to you, giving you an extra second or two to run. Okay. But then again, if you're unhooking 100% faster and you're in the killer's terror radius, you're not going to be able to heal that survivor. So they go against each other. If you have borrowed time, you're going to pull them off, the killer's going to come up, hopefully they'll take the hit for you, and then you both go your separate ways. So I mean, it's kind of a one or the other type thing. The heal is nice, but on the other perk that I showed you, it's what? A 14%. It's 14% plus the unhook speed. If I'm running borrowed time, just a little bit of 14%, or however much it was, unhook speed added on that, is enough to get you off. And enough for us to do whatever we need to get done. So Cool Under Pressure needs a reworking. Bunny Slope can be abused, so it's going to require a reworking. Silent Stare is going to require a reworking because it's way too OP, but you have to have an OP boon perk to deal with an OP killer. So I mean, you have a very good alternative. If they ever introduce alternative killers, this would be the perfect matchup. And I've seen other people's game ideas or character ideas that could implement as an alternative for other things. There was one guy that had a Oni thing, which I might go and review that next. And things of that nature. So we're gonna go down. Also, I'm gonna take a moment, skip ahead a little bit. If somebody wholeheartedly writes this huge thing and you took the time to read it and all of that, do not reply, "Pretty good, yo." That's not feedback. Even if you're, coming through and you're like, it's good, at least write a complete sentence. Write something that you like about it. Put two and two together. Use more than one brain cell. Pretty good, yo. Dude has 32 posts. The best he could put here is pretty good, yo. I have 10, and I repost it and put some sort of helpful feedback. This guy, pretty good, yo. Don't comment. Stop commenting. This means that you have no idea what you're talking about, and you're just wanting to give them some sort of encouragement. You can't give somebody encouragement if you don't know what you're encouraging. This guy supposedly read this. All survivors suffering from exhaustive status effect. And said, that's cool. Rode through all of this and said, yeah, this all sounds reasonable. And he's like, yeah, it's pretty good. Let's implement it into the game. Yeah. There's nothing else I have to say. I'm like, come on, you gotta give some sort of feedback. Anyway, back on topic. This is what I said originally. With worry weather, this is just a description. I said the hex is way too OP. If it was part of a stage up perk like Devour of Hope, you know, you have to do something to keep stepping your way up till eventually all survivors suffer from an exhaustive status effect. That would be pretty balanced. If not, just having them start off with the top of that, it needs heavy nerfing. If you run a perk like that with Haunted Ground, Hex Undying, and things like that, is that you can literally cancel out a majority of perks most games, especially stacked with all of the other special abilities and all of that you gave this character. Like I said, before I wrote this, I didn't even look at the power, because I wanted to go back in with everybody and make sure that, you know, what I wrote fits together with up there, and then go over it in one swoop, instead of essentially doing it twice. So Hex Undying, if you take out the Hex, it swaps to another totem. Haunted Ground, if you take Haunted Ground out, everybody gets exposed for like 60 seconds. Hex Undying can actually reactivate Haunted Grounds twice if you get an idea set up. So in a perfect run, you would have 2 Haunted Grounds hit. That perk, where everybody stays exhausted. So you mean you don't have to worry about dead hard or any type of fakes from that like that. X perk can be, that could be Devour of Hope. Devour of Hope would fit in there. Ruin would fit in there. There's a whole bunch of perks that could fit in there. You can have Nemesis's perk, where you can see all survivors' locations at the start and just kind of get wham bam straight into it. You can also see if anybody's coming next to any of your perks or any of your hex totems. You can see anybody near them, go straight for them, chase them away, or do whatever needs to be done. The hex cooldown, which is the 30% fast run everything. And then Icy Stare. I put both of them together and made one review. So I would actually no. I didn't separate this. I did say something on this. 30% cooldown. I said it was absolutely terrifying for other killers to be able to run this, and there's a lot of killers perks out there with a 30% decrease in time. It'd be terrifying. If it's a 30-second perk, you're knocking off 9 seconds, making it 21-second cooldown. So every, essentially 20 seconds, you can reuse that perk. That's crazy. That's 3 times a minute they'll be able to use whatever perk that is. It takes an entire 18 seconds off of any 60-second cooldowns. So the bigger perks that stop the game and things like that, that's essentially a third of the time knocked off. Generally, it's balanced where if you get in a chase, knock somebody down, activate said perk, and hook them, and find another survivor, that second survivor will go down and be picked up before the perk activates again. But if you're essentially knocking off 20 seconds at the end of every chase that you have, unless, it's literally right in front of the other chase you just had, you're going to activate that perk over and over and over. So you're essentially looking at every chase as opposed to every other chase, unless you have god tier survivors in, then it might be a little bit later. As I said, if you want it to have a higher cooldown, you're going to want to make that cooldown a hex perk. If you want to make it OP, just make it to where survivors can deactivate it. If you want it to have, a 30 or even higher cooldown rate, just make it a hex perk. Make it to where survivors can take it out, and once it's gone, it's gone. You don't have to worry about it all throughout the time. Icy Stare. If you've been out of a chase for 40, 35, or 30 seconds, you'll see the aura survivors more than 40 meters away for 4 seconds. I didn't even think of endgame collapse when I thought about this. I just thought about the perk's implementation. I said that you should buff it and make it about 25 seconds. That ran with cooldown will take it down to 17.5 seconds. You can even drop it down to about 15 seconds. Is how low I would go. Now, if you're thinking about during endgame play, and it was set up that way, that wouldn't be bad. Every 15 to 20 seconds. Well, let me read the whole thing first. It'll make more sense. But going 30 seconds without any type of activity, assuming there's at least 3 survivors working on gens, you've lost up to 24% per gen. So in all together, if you add it all together, that's 100% of process on a gen that you've lost, distributed throughout 4 gens. Plus the time you spend walking to get over to somebody that's that far. Because it's essentially just a barbecue and chili that goes every 30 seconds that you're not near anything. Minus the in-game collapse. Severely underwhelming. Nobody would run that. Well, not even in-game collapse, just in-game before any of that, when there's 2 survivors left. This perk is useless. It's an in-game perk. Or if you're completely lost on what you're doing, it could come and help you. Then I made a joke that every killer has that one perk you would usually nope on. So, it being way up there for 30 seconds makes sense. Every killer generally has a perk that you're like, alright, these 2 perks look good, but this third perk's kinda doo-doo. And you skip over it. That could be that perk. Well, I also wanted the third one is you can also rework it to have an even lower cooldown, but only show 1 survivor more than 40 meters away for 4 seconds. Or have it be a token perk that builds up and builds up and builds up. Like the other perks that I was talking about. You have to do something to get this sort of ability. Now going back to the endgame collapse. If the survivor stays near you, during the, well, when there's 2 survivors left, or if they stay in a locker. This is just going to draw out the game. There's a lot of lockers, and all this is just going to keep drawing out, drawing it out, and drawing it out. And that person's going to be sitting in a locker, waiting on his buddy to die on the hook or bleed out if you didn't hook them, until everything happens. Icy Stare doesn't say it has any type of cooldown. I'll even scroll back up. There's no type of cooldown, which is one of the things that I thought should be added. Thinking endgame collapse and things like that. After the 40 seconds, Icy Stare should have some sort of cooldown. Now it says once you've been out of chase for X amount of seconds it activates, but there should be a cooldown between activates. It shouldn't show for 4 seconds. Reset to 15 seconds or 30 seconds. Activate again 30 seconds. Reset. Activate again after 30 seconds. There should be some cooldown in between activations. Which, I mean, is a great token system, you know? Anytime that you hook a survivor, you get a token that activates after 30 seconds. Like, don't make it to where you can just hold on to it till the end of the game and then basically radar scanner the majority of the map. Make it to where it has to be used during end game. After you hook a survivor, well, no, that would just be barbecue and chili. After you hook a survivor after 30 seconds, you get a scan for 4 seconds. That's literally barbecue and chili. But unlike barbecue and chili that only last one time after being hooked, this resets every 30 seconds. So it's just a reusable barbecue and chili, essentially. Which is why it needs a heavy cooldown added to it. Between the 30 seconds activation time and all of that. I'll retract that, but yeah. Which also goes in with my, it should be a lower decrease in between things. Like, it should have, I don't know, the 30-second cooldown or something like that in between 15-second activations. So when the perk becomes available and you're in chase, it doesn't just reactivate again. Or just out of chase, not just in chase, because we can't activate in chase, obviously. Just out of chase. And the person gets away from you or something like that. It don't just reactivate, repinging them, unless the chase has been for, going on for a while. So, I mean, if I wanted somebody I could chase, lose somebody, then re-grab, I would play Dr. Build, who has the Static Blast. Where you can chase somebody, if you lose them, you Static Blast them, bam, you're right back on them. This, every 30 seconds, it comes back, which I think Static Blast comes back like something like that. Like once every 30 seconds, minute, something like that. So this is a mix between barbecue and chili and Static Blast, or Static Shock, whatever it's called, the AoE Doctor one. It's like a mix of the two shoved together, is what this ends up being. Is this that with a little bit of reworking to bring this in line with the Plague, this would be a great alternative to a Plague if they just added in alternative characters that you can grab. You can make them offerings, you can make it cosmetic, you can make it anything, you know? Back in the day, you used to have like Baba and Michael Myers offerings that you can offer to play as that killer that you got while you were playing other killers. What if they brought that system back, but when you're playing with Plague, you got Ice Queen and other types of variants that are people are making that you can add in. And if they don't want to implement it into their game permanently, make it, you know, you get 2 offerings per 50 levels or something like that, you know, per prestige you're going up. You get 2 offerings per that. When you're prestige 3 and all the way maxed out with the killer, or even add more prestiges, you get 3 per 50 levels. It doesn't have to be an everyday killer thing. There's a lot of things you can do with people's ideas, take them in, and then run them like that. But this is all I wanted to go over, is that alternative killers. So thanks for anybody paying attention to this. I'm going to try to make an alternative killer like post in this same forum, and then lead everybody back to this particular YouTube video. I'm also going to do more YouTube videos on other killers to where everything can just be consolidated, and hopefully eventually get some sort of recognition from behavior or somebody else, and they can say, oh, well, this is a good idea, making alternative types of versions that aren't just cosmetics. It'll revitalize, you know, the game, you know, and other positive feelings and things like that, bringing people back. But until then, I'm Q. Supplement your lifestyle. Thanks.